Okay. 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 So, talking about the story of Metal Gear. Okay, where do I start with this? Well, giving an overview in and of itself would be a little bit difficult, I'd say. So I guess I'll just sort of go. I guess I can just go from beginning to end, sort of. I like how Metal Gear 1 is sort of referenced a bit. Now, Metal Gear does have plot holes, or at least some inconsistencies. That is true, especially if you don't count MGS5, which is sort of debatable in and of itself, because MGS5 is, had a major retcon in and of itself. And I'll go into that later, but for Metal Gear 1, for how it's looked at, or at least presented for the rest of the series, I like it, because you have, like, the line in MGS1 where Snake references Gray Fox. He says he was a captive in outer heaven. I was still green and he showed me the ropes. You get that reference. Of course, he showed me the ropes, I presume, was before the outer heaven meeting, rather than after. Because I don't know if Snake actually interacted with Gray Fox after the outer heaven meeting, really. Because Snake just sort of went into retirement from there until Zanzibar Land. Now, to go into Metal Gear 1 and MGS5 and all that, like, Outer Heaven could be the mother base from MGS5, and you could have fought Venom Snake there instead of Big Boss. Now, I'll make some reference to some theories, pretty much just Mega Destroy Bastard, because all the other theories I find, well, not all the other theories I find, but I can't find much others on the internet that I actually think are credible. Not to say that I can't find any, just not much. Excluding, like, interpretations of MGS2. I'm talking about MGS, the plot as a whole. So, you had the Mega Destroy Bastard theory, and yes, for those who don't know him, makes Metal Gear theories, has some out there. I love what he does, so I don't fully agree with some of the things he's put out, but I find them good to get you into, Metal Gear pondering the plot more than just understanding the plot. Because I think that can be difficult for people in and of itself, but to talk about that theory he had the theory that Outer Heaven was just a test to collect data, and Zanzibar Land would be, created to be impenetrable by Solid Snake. I like that. To be honest, with that, I can actually accept MGS5 a bit. But that is a theory, and to be honest, like, so in Metal Gear 1, at the end, Big Boss says he was manipulating Solid Snake. It's not really said how Big Boss wanted to manipulate Snake. In both translations, the, refined one that most people play, it's actually more vague, saying, I picked you, a rookie, thinking I could use you to manipulate the rest of the world, or trick the rest of the world. But the poor translation, original translation, actually says, I had you spread false information to the rest of the world. So, what I get out of this, in a sense, or at least the way I interpret it, is that Big Boss wanted to spread information to NATO, I presume, so they would underestimate Outer Heaven as a threat, so Metal Gear could be completed, so Outer Heaven would be the strongest nuclear fortress in the world, is how I interpreted it. Now, the whole Outer Heaven was just a test to collect data. Can work, especially if you count MGS5 with Venom Snake. But I think my example can also work. There's a way to make Outer Heaven militarily dominant with its nuclear capability, so it could, Big Boss could create the world he wanted through nuclear deterrence. Which is sort of what he does in Zanzibar Land anyway, actually. Because he actually completes the Metal Gear there. So, those are two, ideas for that. However, the thing is, I think sort of a plot hole, or at least problem, that Venom Snake covers up is the fact that how was Big Boss communicating with you on the radio and was in Outer Heaven at the same time in Metal Gear 1, Because, I presume it would have been that Snake saw Big Boss when he went on his mission. Did Big Boss leave? Was Foxhound in on the entire operation? Like, was Foxhound supportive of Outer Heaven secretly in that way? Or was Big Boss just, using Foxhound as a tool? And then again, you could say that Big Boss probably just... there are multiple ways you could view Big Boss joining Foxhound. You could view it for the point of procuring Solid Snake. That's possible. Or you could view it as Big Boss wanted to get... Well, first off, the thing is, Big Boss... Outer Heaven wasn't necessarily known to have been Big Boss's creation. If he had role in the U.S. Army and had control of Outer Heaven, then, he would be able to... He would have information that Outer Heaven could use to threaten the U.S. It would be a good way to get information. Now, the whole Outer Heaven test theory also supports the importance of Solid Snake. Being that, why was Solid Snake given the name Solid Snake? It's rather important in equivalence, considering it's a reference to Big Boss's old code name. And then again, Big Boss, well, MGS4 says that Big Boss named his clones. Now, I don't know if that means he named Solid Snake David, or that means he named Solid Snake Solid Snake. I don't know if named means, gave him the code name. The code name might have actually been given to Snake once he got into the military, as a reference to Naked Snake. And that was by the military, not Big Boss specifically. Seriously, because what MGS5 does open up is just inconclusive and irrelevant to the rest. Oh, the parasites are the precursors to nanomachines. Okay then. Never brought up, never accomplishes anything. It's just sort of a fact of the verse. You don't get things like Sniper Wolf being trained by Big Boss. You don't get Big Boss going back to Foxhound. You don't get Zero's perspective, which was just told. You never really got to see Zero's transformation at all. You don't even see Zero in Phantom Pain. So, yeah. You don't get to see Big Boss actually complete and make Outer Heaven. as far as you get is the declaration of it in Peace Walker. And you don't get to see that in action, even though you're promised to see that. MGS5 promised to be the gateway that would show fans, you know, how it happened, but MGS5 does not give that. You know, you just get an answer to the question of, I would say, how was Big Boss on the radio and also in Outer Heaven at the same time in Metal Gear 1? You get the answer to that question. But how Big Boss got into Foxhound, why he did it, the details of it, you know, for those who think that MGS5 should have ended with a sort of remix or recreation, I think it would have been great if it ended with the recreation of Solid Snake entering Outer Heaven, you know, swimming in, like how MGS1 sort of recreated that scene. And then, you know, he looks as he does, and it's playing like the song. It could put in like an orchestral sort of remix, you know. And then it goes to Terra's theme, and then you could just have Solid Snake, a young Solid Snake, because we've never really seen a young Solid Snake, at least like in a detailed sense. You know, you get the cover of Metal Gear 1, which is like a reference to the Terminator, and it really doesn't look like Solid Snake to me. And then you get like Metal Gear 2, where you get like the profile picture, which is better in my opinion, but, you know. And then in MGS4, you get like some artwork of like younger Snake, who's in like a semi-sneaking suit. So for those who like say that the sneaking suit wasn't in like Metal Gear 1 or 2, that may be wrong. And I say it would, considering the sneaking suit debuted in like MGS3. So I'd say Snake in Metal Gear 1 and 2 probably wore a form of the sneaking suit. But, like, MGS5 just did not answer the questions that I promised it would. In that way, it's not really a bridge. You know, MGS5 does not bridge, you know. It, like, sort of does. Like, it tries to, in some respects, but it fails. You know? And it's like, the Venom Snake question sort of works, sort of. Because it's like, how did Big Boss set up Outer Heaven and work at Foxhound at the same time? That is a valid question, I'd say. Venom Snake answers that, but it answers questions, but my problem is that you never actually see Big Boss, because the twist is at the ending. And even then, for those who say, oh, the third chapter would have answered everything. No, it wouldn't have. It would have answered one question. What happened to Liquid taking Metal Gear Sahelanthropus? And that leads me into the next point. Why does Peace Walker and Portable Officer, if we count that, and MGS5 have Metal Gears in them? This is something I don't like. I didn't like this. Why do these games that take place before Metal Gear 1 have Metal Gear in them? You know? Why? Why? I don't like it. You know? The way I interpreted it was that you have that scene in MGS3 where, I don't remember his name, but you have that Soviet scientist who made rockets technology and had the idea for Metal Gear. This was the guy who had the original idea for Metal Gear. He discredited the Shagohod and wanted to make a walking mech instead of a tank. And the way this guy described it, he described it as walking battle tanks would be the new artillery, a new tank, the new mainstream in a military arsenal. And Big Boss himself was like Metal Gear, you know, almost as if he was like questioning it and actually considered it slightly relevant. My mind was that Big Boss remembered this, and when Sir Ivan Petrovich Modnar, Drago Petrovich Modnar, had his Metal Gear plans, Big Boss captured him and forced him to create the the mech. And I presume it wasn't originally named Metal Gear, but Big Boss named it Metal Gear after those original plans for Metal Gear that he saw in MGS3. He just remembered that and thought it would be a advancement in military technology. It was just something he remembered. And that was Operation Snake Eater, so, you know. I think Big Boss paid attention. Or at least pays attention in memory. For me, that's how it was. The first Metal Gear, the Metal Gear in Metal Gear 1 was the first Metal Gear. I do not like Metal Gear Zeke or whatever. Why does it have a subtitle? Why is it Metal Gear Zeke? The Metal Gear in Metal Gear 1 is just Metal Gear, and that's it. I don't like it. I don't like it. Peace Walker I have problems with. I have problems with Peace Walker as well. Yeah, to be honest, like, Peace Walker, people have less problems with it. I have problems with it. I have problems with the relevance of Peace Walker, being that Peace Walker, what does it answer? Here's the thing with Peace Walker. If Peace Walker just had Peace Walker and not Metal Gear Zeke and whatnot, I would have no problems. I would have had no problems, but why couldn't it have just been Peace Walker? If it was just Peace Walker, I would have been okay, because I would have been adding to the whole Metal Gear creation thingy. But no, you have Metal Gear Zeke, and that just ruins a bit of things for me. It's not just ruining my preference, but still. You know, and then you have Metal Gear Sahelanthropus and MGS5, which I can't stand at all, considering just by artillery, it's more advanced than any other Metal Gear in the series, despite coming before the original Metal Gear. Game and robot. That just angered me. That really angered me. Couldn't you just call it something different, you know? Why does it need to be Metal Gear Zeke? Why is it Metal Gear? I know reference that fans will eat up, but I don't. It goes against continuity. Yeah. It's not like the Metal Gear 1 needed to be the first one, but that's where Big Boss debuted with the concept. You know? Ugh, I don't like it. Sorry to say. Peace Walker is also pretty fillerific, I'd say. You know? It's pretty irrelevant, I'd say. You know? And yes, in Peace Walker you see Snake declare the creation of Outer Heaven, but... And I like that speech, but meh. Meh, you know? The story itself is disconnected, which for me is okay, but it's not something I think is a major element. For me, it's nice that you get to see it, but, you know, the problem is that Peace Walker doesn't answer questions I consider relevant. Zero's change, implementation of the Patriots, is what I consider relevant, you know. No game answers that. What happened with Zero, who essentially became the main villain of the series? No answer. It's just described to you and you don't see it. You know? And Big Boss, how he attains his goal, how he goes about what he does. Told, not shown. Big Boss, you know, with the idea of Outer Heaven. Peace Walker concludes with that, and to be honest, I'm okay with Peace Walker just for that. Contributing what it does. Metal Gear Zeke cut out of it, and I'd be more okay with it. Another thing is Portable Ops. I don't even bother with, because Portable Ops is very filler, I'd say. Yeah. Although, I mean, Peace Walker treats Portable Ops. That's difficult for me to say. Portable Ops. But Peace Walker treats Portable Ops like it never happened, but MGS4 treats Portable Ops like it did happen, so I say it did happen, even though Kojima didn't direct it. Although, just because Kojima doesn't direct it does not mean that every single game can be counted. Metal Gear Survive, for example, I would not count at all. Metal Gear Survive is just... I don't even know what it is, but it disgusts me a bit. Now... Yeah, Metal Gear Survive just disgusts me in concept. I don't have an opinion on it. That's just what I get out of looking at it. I just... So, I mean, another thing Peace Walker does is that you have... So, Peace Walker takes place like 10 years after MGS3. Does it? No, it's like 1972. Or is it 1970? It should be 1970, I believe. That's what it was, right? Yeah. Yeah, it was 1973, and 2 years later is Ground Zeroes, and then 9 years later is 1984, Phantom Pain. So it would be 1973, okay. That sometimes confuses me. I don't know why. I'm not the most into Metal Gear right now. I'm working on it, but yeah. Metal Gear and Hunter x Hunter. Working on it. I'm just still talking about it right now. I may return later and just get into this even more. But, you know... The problem I have with Peace Walker as well is that what it does is answer... Well, not really answer, but... You have the whole Peace Walker AI being the boss, which I have a problem with, considering the fact that it sort of presents like the fact that Snake hasn't gotten over the boss's death after MGS3, even though yeah, well, if Peace Walker was 1973, that would have meant it was 9 years later, so 9 years later and Snake is still not over the boss's death. He was already told at the end of Snake Eater why the boss did what she did. So him wanting closure on that just confuses me as a character motivation. I just don't understand it. And then you have the whole thing where, like, Big Boss interprets it as the boss abandoning her will by the Peace Walker AI killing itself, which, for me, confused me because Peace Walker, by sacrificing itself, saved the world from nuclear annihilation. Didn't the boss's sacrifice in MGS3 sort of was on the same sort of method? You know? I mean, it's not like... Well, actually, if you really think about it, with Volgan acting out of line and firing off a nuke, that could have sparked nuclear war. So, you know, in a way, that was, you know, what it was, but still. The boss sacrificed herself there for the, you know, future success of, you know, global relations. So, her sacrificing herself to prevent the world from literally being nuked to death. I don't understand why Snake sees that as though she betrayed her will and everything she taught him. Okay, she might have, but it's not like it was unjustifiable or anything, I'd say. Seriously. If Peace Walker stayed around, then... No, like... So for me, it just confused me. Like, I think the boss has reasons for that, if it was the boss. Whatever. We can just say it was. If it was the boss. Her reasons for sacrificing herself are quite justifiable as far as I'm concerned. Even more justifiable than MGS3 as far as I'm concerned, though that was an order and not her choice. It doesn't make sense to me. Sorry to say. Maybe I need to look into it more, but... Yeah. Yeah. Snake wanting closure on something that he already understands fully. Snake not understanding the boss's point of view. You know, just blah. Sorry to say, I'm not the biggest fan of Peace Walker, you know. For me, Peace Walker was already going down a bad road. You know, for me, MGS4 was really good. And the thing is, like, I think games that answer the in-between period like 1970s, 1980s, between the MSX games isn't a bad idea. I don't think it's bad, because it shows how Big Boss turns. The thing is, MGS3 already sort of shows this anyway. Like, it actually does. Like, I think you can understand why Big Boss turned out how he did, not trusting nation-states, considering his nation that he had sacrificed, sacrificed the entire Cobra unit and his mentor for, the nation that lied to him, the nation that he completely believed in. And you see in Snake Eater that he believes in the USA. He does. He can't even understand why people defect to the USSR and whatnot. He doesn't understand. Okay. I sort of cut off there. Yeah, but as I was saying, my video actually just got cut off while I was recording it. My apologies. But Big Boss, did support the USA, and the USA ended up lying to him and ordering him to kill his master, in essence, forcing his master to die by his hand. So, Big Boss coming to dislike, the country system, not liking how countries treat soldiers, and, coming to respect soldiers by fighting in wars across the world, and enlisting an army of his own. Like, it doesn't surprise me that Big Boss turns out how he does in the MSX games. Like, Peace Walker, MGS5, for me, they're answering questions that can already be inferred, and already have been answered, really. It's just Peace Walker and MGS5 allow you to see them in an actual game, Like, you understand that Big Boss creates Outer Heaven because he wants to create a world where soldiers, always have a purpose. Peace Walker shows that, okay? You know that the Les Enfants Terribles project, I can't speak French, but that I'll just call it the Terrible Children project, sorry. But that project starts in 1972 when Big Boss was in a coma after being injured in a military operation. Oh wait, no. That's right. Terrible Children project happens in 1972, so Peace Walker should be in 1970, which means that it's only 5 years after, or no, 6 years after, Operation Snake Eater. Huh, okay. Strange in my opinion. But yeah, that's... because I've been told, like, multiple things. I've been told multiple things that confuse me. It's like, I've been told that, Operation Snake Eater is in 1960. No, it's in 1965. No, it's in 1964. Well, I checked the games, it's 1964. For Operation Snake Eater. Terrible Children Project is 1972. Which happens right after Ground Zeroes, which means that happens, which is 2 years after Peace Walker, which means Peace Walker happens 6 years after MGS3. So that's just how it goes. I remember seeing timelines that had it wrong, but I've checked the games and that's how it is. So, and that was answered at MGS1. Some people forget about that, but it was. Liquid states that, that's how the Terrible Children project came through in 1972. And in Phantom Pain, you see that. You see that, but you already knew what happened, And it's like, I would want to see how Big Boss builds Outer Heaven, I would like to see how Zero turns, but you do know that they do turn. You do know what happens. It's just, I would like to see that. I would like to, but I don't need to. Not for actually answering, like, the story. So in that, Peace Walker and MGS5 for me are a bit unnecessary. a bit unnecessary in the whole. I mean, you get to see it, but, you know, you already knew what was going to happen. Now I'm going to talk about MGS's spin on reality. Now, the way MGS covers itself is based on covert operations carried out by a single agent, usually. Due to that, these incidents that are covered in the games get quite a bit more importance than I'd say a usual op would in real life. Like the Shadow Moses incident gets all this coverage after MGS1, but how many military ops like that would actually get that much coverage in real life? And how much effect would they really have on, you know, the big picture? Now, the thing is, you know, they sort of have a big effect, but they sort of don't, being that world events in the real world seem to just play out as they did in reality. As in, the USSR still collapses in 1991, you know, despite the changes that Metal Gear Solid has. I mean, USSR probably would still collapse for the same reasons within that world, I'd say, but still, you know. And then you do get an issue here, being that the series does not have perfect continuity. Being that in Metal Gear 2, it starts by saying that Zanzibar land is a small country in between the Middle East, China, and the USSR. Well, the USSR didn't exist in 1999, even in the Metal Gear timeline. That could have been changed, so the USSR collapsed in like 2000 or something, and then that line would have made sense, but it doesn't. They didn't say former USSR, they just say USSR. Well, they say that because the game came out in 1990, in real life, where the USSR still did exist at that time. So I don't blame them for making that mistake, but that could have been fixed two ways. A, just edit the translation to fix that retcon, or fix that plot hole, actually. That's a full-on plot hole. That is a full-on plot hole. Or B, just make the USSR collapse at a later time. And that can still work within the Metal Gear timeline. If the USSR collapsed in 2000, then in MGS1, which takes place in 2005, you know, the idea of reviving Russia that Ocelot presents would still make sense. You know, it still works. And you can just give some excuse saying that, oh yeah, the USSR was able to, like, curb its food shortages and infrastructure problems through some method. Whatever they make up, you can do it. Yeah, you can just make it up. Or say that, like, nationalism doesn't rise in the stands and whatnot, and not in the Baltics and whatnot and whatnot. Just make up something. You can do it. You've done it before. I mean, pretty much all the Metal Gear Solid games comprise a government-held conspiracy. So you've already made up stuff, so you can do that. You can do that. But they don't. So that line in Metal Gear 2, plot hole. Sorry to say. Plot hole. And then again, some people seem to say, like, and I just pointed that out, and some people, even Mega Destroy Bastard brings this up, that Zanzibar land could potentially be Selino-Yorsk, the Soviet territory Big Boss infiltrates in MGS3, but no. You see where Selino-Yorsk is in MGS3 in the briefing. It's around western Siberia. I don't even know if that place is real. And I've already, you know, seen a video saying that Selino-Yorsk contradicts, like, actual nature. And such a place doesn't actually exist in, you know, Russia. Because that is in Russia, the Russian Soviet Socialist Republic, at that time. Now, so, you know, Zanzibar land is not Selino-Yorsk. It isn't. Symbolically, it could make sense, but it just is not. Selino-Yorsk does not border China, the Middle East, and the USSR. That's just not how... It just doesn't work like that. Sorry to say. So, you know, it's not really known where Selino-Yorsk is then. I'd say it's probably in Turkmenistan. You know, probably around there. It would probably need to be there, really. Yeah, it would need to be in Turkmenistan, so that's where it would be. Somewhere there. And that works, I'd say. Now, another problem is that, like, the MSX games sometimes just sort of get discounted. Like, MGS4 brings up that the war economy has, like, replaced the oil economy, and the oil economy is in tatters. But what about Oilix? In in Metal Gear 2, the world was facing an oil crisis earlier than expected. But Oilix is created, which solves this problem. Is Oilix now unsuccessful, or did you just completely forget about Oilix? Like, you know, was Oilix even implemented? Apparently it was a miracle solution, so I'm pretty sure it would be. Like, Kojima? Eh? Can you answer that, Metal Gear theorists? Because that seems like a plot hole to me. You know, how is the oil economy collapsing if it's literally just can be produced without difficulty through Oilix? You know? I mean, maybe, like, oil sales just dropped due to PMCs, but it doesn't... it's not stated like that. Blah. Blah. I mean, yeah, like those things being, you know, that whole Zanzibar land border trouble, as well as the Oil-X problem. Why don't you listen to Metal Gear 2? Metal Gear 2 is what it is. You gonna just ignore it because most people didn't play it when it came out? I mean, So, Metal Gear Solid. The thing with Metal Gear Solid is that it was set up by Solidus, but it's unknown really how much like Solidus and Ocelot planned for Liquid to do. But I'd say it probably worked out to their plans. As Ocelot got the data on Rex, which was later spread, which led to the Metal Gear development. I don't think I'll talk much about the plot of MGS. Yeah, maybe later, but as for this, you know, for me it's pretty basic, I'd say, you know. You get the whole Fox die thing, and it's later answered that Liquid and Snake's genetic pattern isn't completely identical, which is why Fox die affected Liquid but not Snake. And I mean, okay, but it was stated multiple times before that Snake and Liquid's genetic pattern were identical, as it was supposed to be. But apparently it's slightly different, and even Snake is confused by this when it's mentioned in MGS4. And it answers the question, but still. And then Solidus Snake is different, because he's apparently a perfect clone of Big Boss. Huh. I mean, that makes sense, considering they're actually identical. Solid Snake and Liquid Snake look similar to Big Boss, but aren't identical. I always thought that Liquid Snake actually, like, dyed his hair blonde, and he wasn't actually naturally blonde. Because Big Boss wasn't naturally blonde, why would a clone have a different hair color? Yeah, that's what I thought. It's defendable. But, still, like... I mean, you have yeah, like MGS1 is what it is. I enjoy it. I consider it very important. But for me, it's... I mean, you have the whole themes it brings up, like, oh, war economy, nuclearization, deterrence, conspiracy theories. I mean, the whole conspiracy theory thing is just sort of, for me, it's a bit laughable. Yeah. I'll go into the Patriots. Yeah, I'll go into the Patriots right now. So, the Patriots, for me, they have an awkward standing. Now, apparently, the philosopher's legacy is like $100 billion. Now, I don't know if they mean $100 billion in modern terms, which would be pretty good, I'd say, but probably not the amount of funding I'd say that Zero actually got out of it. But if it's $100 billion in, like, 1964 terms, that's pretty insane, I'd say. That's pretty ridiculous, I'd say. So, okay. Philosopher's Legacy, if it's, like, equated like that, then I understand. So I presume it will be. Now, the problem is that you have, like, the boss winning World War II for the Allies and whatnot. So that's sort of like a major thing, I'd say, that's just sort of put in, you know, as like almost like a fanfiction World War II, you could say. I mean, well, whatever. That's what it is. The Cobra unit was there, and then you have the Philosopher's Legacy going to Vulcan by whatever means. And so I'll go into it. So the Philosophers apparently were the real rulers of the USA. Now, from what I understand, that's what they are. They are the real leaders behind the USA who control its government, and I guess Congress, and never really existed within this conspiracy theory thingy. Now, just looking at history, this confuses me, as the USA's government was basically just an alternative branch of the British government in terms of its legislation. So does that mean there's, like, a British, like, philosophers or Wiseman's committee and whatnot? Or something? Or is this, like, a specific American thing? And I guess it is, because it's only brought up in the USA. And with that, it only being in the USA would mean that it wasn't actually really much of a global organization until following World War II, because the USA wasn't really much of a global country before World War II. They had global relations, but they weren't a major global power. So that makes it just strange to me. Very strange to me. They have this American organization. They're basically the 12 dictators of the USA. And how they were created and why they were created, I wouldn't understand. Why would you do that? I mean, you could have a Congress filled with around 400 people. Maybe even 500 versus 12 dictators. I mean, the reason you choose democracy is because it allows for a proper, healthy debate that lets the majority voice its opinion and lets the majority have power and decide how things go. You know, that's why Britain put in democracy following the English Civil War. Well, not put in democracy, but developed it. Developed the English Parliament. Because the Parliament as a whole is much less corruptible than just one monarch. And a Congress for the USA would be much less corruptible than 12 dictators. So I don't see why it would even be put through. Like, how did this even come about? It's just not answered. They just were there. And apparently they died in 1907, I guess. Around 100 years before MGS2. So, okay. Is there, like, a replacement, like, philosophers? Or, like, patriots or whatever? Like, is there, like, a replacement of them? Or, like, did they just... was that it? Like, They just, like, were they there since the beginning of the USA, or, like, partway through, or I don't know, I don't understand. Meh. You see why these conspiracy theories of, oh yeah, this organization has secretly been in control in the USA for this long, and it's doing this, just don't make sense to me. And I mean, to be honest, if the Patriots really have just formed history as a whole, and I'll say this for all these conspiracy theories that history is just, like, articulated and made up by some overseeing organization, then what I'll say is good. You did a good job writing it, as far as I'm concerned. Seriously. Got quite a lot of depth, I'd say. You know, you got my respect if that's just some made-up story to convince the media. Good, in my opinion. You got my respect. But, yeah. I don't think so. Like, ugh, yeah. It's got these, like, Americans conspiracy theories, even though the USA hasn't really been a major global power for even 100 years, so... So yeah, the Patriots I find a goofy concept, yeah. Despite what people think, I find it quite goofy. Ugh. I mean, yeah. And besides, there's also things that, like, they manipulate information the way they do, which just confuses me. Oh, like, they manipulate, like, scientific reports and whatnot. Like, Emma gives the example of, they, like, manipulate a report saying how much, like, what was it, cells are in the human body or something? And it's like, why'd they even bother manipulating that? Manipulating science in that way just spreads misinformation, which, in turn, leads to poor science. Why would you want poor science? That gives you better technology and knowledge of the world as a whole. So why would you manipulate that? How would that even serve the Patriots? You see, you just, you know... you know, for other people who don't have, you know... they don't have the perspective that I do, the knowledge that I do. It's something they can enjoy questioning, but for me, the whole, you know, conspiracy theory thing is pretty nonsensical. And all the MGS games have this. All the numbered MGS games. Except for MGS 5, because, meh. I don't know, the thing is, I don't even count MGS 5 as a numbered MGS game, even though it is, you know. For me, it's its own thing, you know. It's like you have the MSX games, the MGS games, which is like 1 to 4, and then you have like Peace Walker and MGS 5, and then you have like Portable Ops on the side as its own thing, although it will be connected to Peace Walker and MGS 5. And I mean, yeah, so the whole conspiracy theory things I find quite goofy, you know. When it's like, oh yeah, the Philosopher's Legacy was made by China, the USA, and USSR in, like, what, the 1930s? Because, yeah, those countries were definitely on trading terms with each other. It's not like there was a Great Depression happening and the USA wasn't trading with other countries at all, and the USSR was trading with no countries at all. Yeah, you know. It's not like China was in political anarchy and in civil war and therefore had barely any foreign relations. You know, like, yeah. And, like, the way they're brought up, and even the way they're shown with their borders. You look at the USSR's border, it's actually just Russia modern day and not actually the USSR. Which makes me think, you know, it was articulated in the thought of Russia. Although they play up the USSR gag being that, not gag, but concept being that's the 1960s. This feels more articulated to me than a real story, which for me is fine. But, you know, I just, like, when I see, like, MGS3, it shows, like, a map when it's talking about how the Philosopher's Legacy was formed. And it just shows the USA with its modern borders, China, and Russia, but it's like Russia modern borders, not the actual USSR, which just takes me out of it. It really does. Just things like that take me out of it, you know. And yeah, it's like, oh yeah, this cache of funds was just made in, like, at a time where these countries weren't trading at all. You know? And it's like, they don't even mention Britain and France, who at that time were, like, the foremost global powers. Bleh. You know? Bleh. Like, them not mentioning Britain and France to me makes it feel like it's viewing it with a modern sort of view, being that, oh yeah, you know, USA, Russia, China, big, strong countries. You know, it's like they don't even remember those days where Britain comprised 23% of the entire Earth. You know, for me, it's a bit awkward. The whole conspiracy theory thing. Yeah. Okay. I think I'll go back to this later. I got more things to talk about, but I think I'll go back to this later. So I think this will be it. Goodbye.